What's up, guys? We are back with a new installment of the Loaded Dice podcast. Everybody's been asking, and we are here to deliver.
What is up? It's been, I did the thing.
Yeah, it's
You know
all
what?
good. It's been a minute. It's fine. You know
Yeah.
what to expect. It's quality over quantity here at Loaded Dice, and to that end, Faint was the first one in Masters this season. Kind of cracked player. I think it's not even the first time you've done that, right?
The fastest before this, I was the second person to hit Masters not a couple seasons, maybe like 4 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Behind 4LW.
So what was the secret this season? How'd you do it, dude?
This time it was jumping on Yia before anybody else.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw Gnar, I was like, well, this is the champion that I can build a lot of decks with. I built a bunch of different shells, a bunch of different things, and like Yordle and Arms was one of the decks I had like ready to go and was like, this one's probably really good. I kind of don't want to resort to this, but I was like going through all of the different Gnar ones, hit the Yordle and Arms deck, won a game, won another game, kind of just kept winning through, and I'm like, I can't switch now. And that was like, I was streaming at the time, right? And in that stream session, I just flew from plat to diamond, like in that one session. And I had some other stuff to do throughout the day, right? So I was like, all right, got to end stream here. We'll see what it's looking like later and see what's going to happen. I jumped back on later that night, and I was still one of like the only people in diamond.
Dang.
So I was like, all right, well, let's see how this session goes. Go from diamond 4 to diamond 2 really fast, and was like, well, now I kind of have to do it, right?
You're
like
there. Yeah.
I'm the only one in diamond 2 at this point. And my win rate was absolutely insane. So I was like, all right, let's try to make this final push. But this is where I hit a bit of a roadblock that is one of my least favorite things about trying to climb so early, and makes like that early Masters push like a little less fun.
Even more difficult too, I would say.
More difficult, and I don't know. It's just like rough, because normally it's something that doesn't, well, first of all, let me just say what happened.
Yeah.
Queue time started to take a very long time.
We're talking like world record queue times.
We're talking like 40 minutes to an hour for a match.
For a game.
For one game. So I'm sitting there, I'm still winning, I'm still doing good, but to just find a match is taking an absurd amount of time. And
because they won't put you with anyone below like a certain rank within diamond, right? Like once you're that high in diamond, you're not playing platinums anymore.
yeah, so one thing, it'll be a lot of the same people, and it'll be longer queue times. But normally, like when it happened in the past when I was going and I was the second person, and other times I've had other early master pushes, right? There'll be like one other person who's also like gunning for it, and you and that person will kind of just go head to head over and over again until one of you makes it. But I didn't have that other person that was there. So instead, it was just like, all right, now I'm just sitting here like waiting for any diamond player to just queue up a match. And even then, it doesn't want to give me them. So it's like, I don't know how it exactly works for the searches, but yeah, it took a while. Like I was in diamond 2 by like, I don't know, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And to finish my climb, I finished around like 5 a.m.
Holy.
So it was like, it was a grind. I like, again, I've never been the first person to hit master, so I had to do it. But man, I wish it went a little bit quicker. That's like a quality problem to have, one I don't see them to address. But hey, if Riot is watching, if they could do a little bit of something about that.
Just like put in a max queue time of like 10 minutes or something, and then
Yeah.
it automatically will pull someone who else, who's looking, and then like try to sort it based on the closest rank. But to really just hard force diamond only when you're in diamonds and there's no diamonds playing and you have that long of queues kills your desire to play the game at all and
Yeah.
have a fun experience.
It's ridiculous. And it's like, it just sucks because you like have to do it at that point.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in the past where other players get real discouraged and be like, you know what, I just have to sleep. We're humans. But anyways, that was kind of my ride there, just taking advantage of Gnar. Yordle and Arms was already strong the season before, and just flipping up the package a little bit with like, I'm personally, because man, a lot of people were talking to me about this too, where they're like, oh, but isn't this just a worse version of Lulu? I'm like, what's so great about Lulu? For me, at least, like, one, you have to run Flame Chompers, which, yeah, when you
Yeah,
have your Lulu, that's nice. When you have your Yia, that's nice, but that's not
it's a
like the
terrible top deck.
yeah, it's
Usually.
a terrible top deck. Not really like the greatest card outside of that. Like it needs to stay strong in conjunction, and like it could just get removed like pretty like you don't have protection spells. Like
Yep.
it's just gonna get removed. Same with Lulu. Like the Lulu just gets blocked half the time. So I don't know. I'm like, why does everyone think that? Like Gnar drops instant. They need to react like immediately,
Yeah.
and if they don't, you just value city. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but okay.
I was in that camp at first too because I'd seen the like I'd played a lot of that Lulu Yia deck. It was the first one to like really have major success on ladder, and I was like, no, the Chompers combo is just like too strong. But after playing around with more with Gnar, like it has Overwhelm, which the deck never had access to before. It has Pokey Stick, which can remove blockers, which is like so crucial, so you're not getting chumped out. And like the stat line is good. You have quick attack. You're giving vulnerable to the highest health unit. Like it does all of these things that the other deck didn't have access to. And then like you're saying, it doesn't have to run main deck chompers at all anymore. So it did improve the power level for sure.
Yeah. And then another card I had in there that got questioned a lot is a couple copies of Wallop.
Yeah.
And for one reason I had it was early season new cards though. People don't play around that stuff. People don't expect it. People know the type of strategy I generally try to run when I'm on the ladder. And a lot of people go for these big open attacks, go for these like lifesteal, whatever. I hit them with the Wallop and they're just not ready for it. Overall too, I think Wallop at the time was a very like slept on card. Like it's a lot better than people were giving it credit for. Like, why would you run Wallop? I'm like, stunning is good.
Yep.
Stunning is really strong. Buying yourself one more turn often, especially in aggro decks, wins you the game.
Also can be removal, right? Which like
literally too, yeah.
Like concussive palm never is that. So another bonus there.
But like those are like the main changes. Run ballistic bot. I love ballistic bot,
Yeah,
but
you do.
And it works well with Gnar, but that was like the only real other change I made to the Yia list, and flew through the ladder and we did it. First one to hit Masters.
And you tweeted too. You were like, "This once Gnar was released, Faint tweeted and was like, this champion, oh my god, it's the freest rank one of my life."
Yeah, that was literally what I tweeted as soon as I saw the trailer. And I just tweeted that more so thinking I did think I was for sure gonna hit rank 1 at some point in the season with Gnar. I was like, yeah, this looks pretty easy. But I did not think I was gonna be the first one. And when I did, I was like, well, this tweet aged really well right now.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of success. There's a lot of Yia running around right now on ladder. I love the card. I know a lot of people hate the card and want to see it nerfed into the ground. I just like the decks that it's in. I like the Bandle City unit printer decks.
Yeah.
They're kind of like the Targon invoke decks of old, where you never run out of resources. I like those decks. And this one happens to be aggro, which I also like. I've been having success with the Monte Cristo, and I have worked on a version. It's like Tristana Atro, that old deck, but now you run Yia in it, which really felt like the missing piece in the deck. And then you're running, a bunch of Fey units as well to just like flood the board with Fey units. The Lantern card is crazy. You're like dropping free telescopes. And then Grandfather Fey is like a nuts card that makes the deck have fearsome blockers. They trade up. Like Spell Shielded Owlcats 3/1s, 4/1s for free is crazy strong. And then you play Yia on top of that. So I just put a video out on it if you want to check it out. But I went on a 10-win streak with that deck. It was so sick.
The Fadex is an archetype that has been coming in strong for sure. All the different versions of it.
Yeah, there's the Demacia.
The Demacia, the Shadow Isles. I was running a PNZ version for a second that did pretty well for me. Like, there's just been like so many different versions of the Fae cards, and yeah, it's a strong package. Another card from that package that I like is I think it's the Fae Sprout, right? The Manifest.
Yeah. I
like that one because
burst speed Manifest.
There's a wide variety of Faes, and you can hit some pretty like situational ones. You don't have to like run it. You could just hit the the double attack or something.
Yeah, the Papercraft.
Yeah, the Papercraft.
Or just give your unit elusive. Attach is like stronger than we thought it was in specific decks, at least. Like when we first saw the keyword, it didn't look good. maybe just on Yumi, but a lot of these cards are like coming in as like the combo piece cards that really make the decks shine, like the Ruin Runner like double overwhelm deck that one of my used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one would be a little frustrating for me when I lose. I'm like, okay, you played Ruin Runner, you played Papercraft, and I lost.
You lose.
That is it. Yeah, that it's a strong one. It's super crazy. Like the other thing I was gonna say is I literally forgot what I was gonna say. So I mean,
I'll take it. I had a different experience than Feint. Feint's out here hitting rank 1s faster than anyone else. The end of my last season was a little rough in the seasonal. I had this 7-2 seeding, even though people thought I didn't, like at rank 40, I ended the season, and all these ladder players would like, oh, you don't have X2. You got to be top 30. You got to be top 25. Yeah. At the end of the seasonal, top 50 players made it X2.
Oh, wow.
So they were wrong as hell.
They were wrong.
I would have made it had I gone 7-2. I think I dropped at 5-3 or like 5-3 or 6-3 or something. But I played Lee Sin. I brought Lee Sin. I played Lee Sin. I didn't know how to play Lee Sin, and like 3,000 people saw it over Swim stream and the Giant Slayer stream. So watchers of the podcast, don't bring decks to seasonal you don't know how to play. Go with the comfort pick. I went with like this is optimal theory. I'm going to be able to beat Pantheon, and like it's so powerful into so many things. But at the end of the day, my inexperience on the decks shone through, and we learned a valuable lesson that seasonal.
There's something I always say that I think boils that down, where a winning matchup is only a winning matchup if you know why it is.
Yep.
If you know like the interactions, the situations, it's a winning matchup. But if you don't, you're gonna get exposed.
Yeah, for real.
Unfortunately, I hate to be you that had that happen, but yeah, I'm sure there's many other people in similar situations with different decks that it's like just having a deck you practiced and played a lot during the season is the way to go. And speaking of which, I mean, talking about this seasonal, not exactly coming up yet, but an interesting aspect of it is Gnar, and like the best place to play him, because him being a champion that's just like in so many different decks, going around in so many different ways. Like, what's the deck that you actually want to be running Gnar in? Because you can flip it like Yordle and Arms. You can take the Gnar for Lulu. You can there's so many ones where you could almost always switch it. But yeah, I
think Gnar Timelines, another popular deck. 4LW played, really great player to get into Masters very fast. Like that deck needs Gnar. Like it is not as good without Gnar at all. I've seen people put in Jace, which is like,
I don't know about that. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
But like you need the draw. The overwhelm is solid. You there's so many reasons that Gnar works in that deck, giving vulnerable, so then your Trundle can attack. And you need to draw into timeline. So draw is really important. So that's like a deck I think if you're playing, you can't sub out Gnar. But a lot of the Yia ones, like you're saying, I just played in an MR daily, like $100 daily, and I ran a 9x Yia lineup. And I was like, I could take Gnar out of this deck, put in this champ, it's fine. I could took Gnar out of tree, like you don't need it. So there's a little more flexibility in those like aggressive decks, but it is like Gnar can be the glue in a few specific decks that you like definitely can't remove him from. Yeah,
absolutely. Speaking of the Mastering Runeterra dailies, a great thing that they're doing and just giving like opportunity for everybody to practice and get ready for seasonals in a way, even though we will be getting a balance patch before seasonals, correct?
Yeah, let's dive into that part of it. So we're going to be getting a balance patch on March 30th. They are like Riot as a whole company, I think they're giving their employees a week off in March, which is cool to see. Like that's great. So it's pushing back the balance patch a little bit to the end of the month, which is a bit out, but is still before seasonals. What are you expecting to see in this balance patch, or at least what do you want to see?
What I'm expecting to see to start off, I would say, is a nerf to Gnar.
Yeah.
What I would also expect to see is, I feel like on release champions, they're always a little light on those types of nerfs. I imagine them to just take off an attack, if I were to guess. But I would say that Gnar is strong enough that you might need a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see him nerf more past that point in the future. Other cards that I could see getting a nerf, needing a nerf. I could see Papercraft getting nerfed just because it's like it's a not that it's OP, but it's a tilter for lower level players. I think.
Yeah.
I don't think they don't like getting smorked by double attack. Not one that needs it. I think Conchologist, Telescope, all these different create cards, Pokey Stick could use a nerf. But I just don't know exactly how they'd go about it. Like something like Pokey Stick, I could see them changing it to maybe like not hitting the Nexus, but then that would hurt the Gnar synergy, right? The synergy that Gnar has with the card. I could see them maybe the card it draws is fleeting, something like that. Could be a cool nerf to Pokey Stick. A lot of different Bandle City stuff is like where I expect the majority of nerfs needing to come down. Other than that, I'm not really like sure.
Yeah, I think they could make like the Pokey Stick that Gnar generates fleeting or something like that, so you're not like just locked into that value immediately. If you're like slamming Gnar on 4 with no banked mana, then you know there's a little bit of a cost to that. I think that Conch could go to a 2/1, and I like the idea of limiting the looping telescope epic pool, like either based on cost, so like only, you know, epic cards that are like 6 or less mana or something like that, or limiting it by the regions that you're playing the card in, like for your deck. So you're only getting epics from like, you know, Targon, Bandle City, and whatever other region you're playing, PNZ. That could be good.
I think that could be good, but that's also, I would say, shows the issue and why it's difficult to balance at the same time, though. Because it could be good for certain decks, but it could be better for other decks where it makes certain hits more consistent.
True.
And raises consistency for some other cards. Obviously, when you're only getting one epic, it doesn't really. But it's like, it's way harder to nerf than I think people give it credit for. Same with Conchologist. You can change the body of Conchologist like a ton, and it's still, the main value of it is the spell it's generating, you being able to pick a spell.
Right.
So I don't know. And that's like the biggest problem with Bandle City, I feel. It's just like, it's so difficult to balance all these cards. They're doing everything. They're doing it all really well. And trying to tune down the package. They've hit a ton of cards in Bandle City already.
Yeah, they already nerfed Mayor.
They nerfed Mayor. They nerfed Poppy. They nerfed like more. Even Telescope itself, you could count it as a nerf that it doesn't create itself anymore.
Right, true.
So like it's gone down in power level in certain aspects, but it doesn't matter. Mayor's still making the cut in a lot of decks too. Like it just shows how big the gap is. Like they've been needing to hit the same cards multiple times and everything. Yeah, I think is another obvious hit that needs to be.
No, don't do it.
Hit. I think like it. Yeah, +4/+4 is a lot. That's a lot of stats, but
they could also make it 6 mana, but I think making it +3/+3 is fine too. If they make it 5 regions, that'll be tough.
5 regions is tough because I've had it a bunch of times where I'm hitting the Yia on curve like
perfectly.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Just perfectly. You draw a Protoporo or something, and you're like, Teemo, I can.
Yeah, you're already there, and then you're just popping off with the Yia super early. So adding another region makes it a lot more of a deck building cost, which I feel like might be the way to go, but it makes it rough. It's definitely not a hit all card, which it's fun for me and something that I enjoy when a card is so flexible and it can just make it into like so many different decks.
Yeah.
But I feel like it should take a little bit of more skill, like in that any deck you're like, oh wait, well I should probably just drop some Yias in this. Like every Bandle City deck is just manifesting units, manifesting a bunch of different regions. Like I'm gonna hit this Yia at some point. I could just drop this card in here.
Yeah, putting Yia in my Bandle Tree deck, or like one of our teammates on the Wombats came up with it, and I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. And it's like just winning, like it was 50-50 into Pantheon probably, and now I think it's favored with the Yia in there. It's like so good. And you're already running a bunch of regions, so there is no deck building cost to it.
Absolutely. And one of those catch them off guard type of cards for sure. You swarm the board, a lot of times they're not really worried about it. They're like, the buff from Poppies is like, it's all well and good, but it's actually way harder to beat down opponents than you'd normally think. So like they're normally fine taking damage, I feel like, into Bandle Tree. It's like, yeah, they're not going to kill me. And then you hit a Yia on them and they're like, oh, wait, no, they did not just do this.
I think Lantern could also be hit.
Yes.
The discount is insane. Like every round, it should probably be 1.
Two is a lot.
2 is a lot. Like you just play another unit, and then what? Lantern like effectively costed 1, and it's a 3/3, and then like it keeps getting value from that point on.
Yeah, it gets its value off like the first unit, and like you said, every round. So it makes it almost impossible to keep up with that type of value when they're having so many Fays in the deck.
Yeah.
And then the Fays make more Fays, and like it's a crazy archetype for a reason. You can see the Lantern definitely getting a hit. Speaking of Bandletree, I could see Bandletree taking a hit. I feel like it should. I could also see Bandletree, like, it's not an OP deck, I would say, but I would say it's an OP in tournament deck. So I can see it hitting that Lee Sin spot where it just never really gets a nerf because it's not as crazy on ladder.
Right.
And then just mess up tournaments
just
as
keep
it always
dominating.
does.
Yeah.
Like how Lee Sin just always comes back a little bit when seasonals come around.
I think that also ties into like Darkness has like dodge nerfs a lot.
Yeah.
It's so strong, and Bandletree is so strong because it's like really good into Darkness. That's a favored matchup. Like if Darkness gets worse, I think Bandletree gets worse. The stat line on that 3/2 catalyzer is ridiculous. Like it's so strong. I think Extalia is really strong too, but people say it's late game, so it's supposed to be strong. I just think there's a lot of cards, or like the 3/4 that discounts the Darkness. There's a lot of ways. I think Darkness could use like a little bit of tweaking as well.
I agree with that. And it's just funny as we're going and as we're thinking about it. It's like, there's another actual Bandle City deck that I'm thinking could use a nerf too. Like, you know what I mean?
True.
Every deck that is just splashing in Bandle City is just kind of crazy. Like, I know, for example, I haven't seen many people playing this deck, but Blue God hit rank 1 in every region, I think simultaneously.
Yeah.
And he did it playing Gnar Swain, which is like, I haven't even dipped my toes into that. But if he's performing that well with it, I'm sure that's another crazy deck that might need have some cards in there that needs to be hit up. But yeah, Bandle City, it's the problem that has been spoken about so much at this point that I feel like, you know, everybody gets it, but it's just so real right now. We never had an expansion where I think a region is just such a standout and hits every kind of deck.
I think
the control deck, the aggro deck, the mid-range deck, they're all Bandle City.
It just makes, like, I think Targon, it reminds me a lot of Targon in its prime when, like, it was just, like, so good. It had the healing, it had the Celestial units that could push huge damage. Like, they kind of gutted it with the Aphelios nerfs and stuff. And now it's just, like, a shell of what it used to be. And I've, like, latched onto Bandle City as, like, the new region that's really fun and really strong. And, yeah, it needs the nerfs, but I'm going to be sad if they kill a lot of the decks. So it's going to be a fine line for them to walk between, like, making it fair, but hopefully still playable.
Yeah, but I would also say, to that, another reason that Targon doesn't really see the play it does, too, is just the fact that Bandle City does the Targon thing better.
Oh, yeah,
it's just doing the same thing, too. So it kind of just devalues what they did with Targon and the identity they gave that region. They just gave it to another region.
True.
Adding 20 other things to it. Like, yeah. As far as other cards to get nerfed, not really much else comes to mind off the top of my head.
Udyr buff would be cool.
Udyr buff, man, and that just makes me want to talk about Udyr for a second here.
I haven't played the champ at all, but seems really cool.
I have got him on a couple of deck redeems from my chat. I have, viewers can play their deck, and that's the only time I've felt the interest to play Udyr. And I gotta say, though, I do not like the design of that champion. Dang. I think it just isn't cohesive. It doesn't make sense. His level up doesn't really make sense with like what he's trying to do as a champion, and his payoff doesn't like make sense with like the way you level him up. Like, the whole identity of Udyr is like just so shaky. It's just like a way more shaky version of Aphelios. Like Aphelios, it's like, I make moon weapons, I level up when you play moon weapons, I discount my moon weapons. It's like a complete package.
Yeah.
Udyr's like, what's up? I have no keywords. I discount my thing after I attack, after I die.
Do damage.
Yeah,
this amount of times.
And if you do damage 20 times, I'll make myself stronger with the stances you didn't play this game because you were using your mana to hit the Nexus. So I'll be a 5/5. I'm like, what are you doing? Like every time I'm like, wait, what is happening here? What is happening with this champion? Like I was frustrated. I think he needs a buff, and I would even say I think he needs a redesign in some ways. Like certain aspects of him need to be switched up to like make sense. He doesn't make sense. Kudos to all the people trying to play Udyr. I ran into an Udyr today when I played a match. Shout outs to you, man. You're fighting the good fight. Side note, surprisingly, that game ended in a tie, but shout outs to the Udyr gamers.
I just had a tie on Bandletree in the MR tournament. Like,
oh yeah?
In a mirror match. Yeah, Udyr's like, they were trying to make him like the Freljord of Felios. I think it's really important for them to rework him, also buff him, because such like an important champ in League, I feel like. Just like so many people love Udyr, main Udyr, in a way that like not as many other champions in the game, like Zoe and stuff. They have that just like level of people who are attached to them like that. So it's pretty sad to see that he's like fringe playable and also confusing.
Yeah, I think they'll get around to it, but it's just made me reevaluate like in past expansions. I've been like, man, Rumble looks really bad, and all these other champions that I've been like, man, they look really bad. And then now Udyr came around, and I'm like, all those champions look amazing.
Rumble's good. Like Draven Rumble's okay right now. People are doing work with it.
A lot of people I've seen doing work with that deck for sure. I would play that deck a lot if I didn't have such a strong stint with like Draven Victor and decks like that in the past. I'm like, I've had my time with that kind of deck, but for sure, honestly, one I'd probably consider when I'm gonna jump into seasonals, jump into tournaments. That's a good deck for sure.
We're talking about the new champs. Might as well talk about Yumi. I think Yumi's really bad, but it's interesting that she's in debatably the best deck in the game right now. Not debatably like a solidly tier 1 deck in the Pantheon version. But like, she's bad though. She's just bad.
She is bad. She's like really slow at what she's doing. Like it goes perfectly. I think when I saw Yumi, it's like the idea is it's supposed to go with Pantheon. Like it makes sense to go with Pantheon, and it works with Pantheon, which is like at the end of the day, I guess all that really matters. It's like if a champ fits into one deck, it's good. It's got a home. But yeah, outside of that, Yumi's been a piece of work to make work. Like so often you just cut it for even like other attached cards, other cards in her package work better than but yeah, so often people are cutting Yumi for like other cards within that package, like the other attached units, which just shows like when cards from the package are getting added over the champion, that's a bad sign. Similar thing with Udyr, the 2 cost that makes a stance often is just better than running Udyr.
Yep. Yeah. I think the attached keyword is interesting because like I like that silence doesn't affect the stats.
It's
like,
very cool, very like unique.
I think I think it's a unique way, and like if it did, attached would just be utter garbage. So I like that they have that interaction. I've seen people like trying out Fizz Yumi as well. Have you tried that out at all?
I have not tried it out, but again, talking about my games, I played I played about 3 games today.
Yeah.
One of the games against Fizz Yumi.
Yeah.
And so I've seen people messing around with that. I think it's not too bad. Again, Pantheon's the best way I would say to play Yumi by far. But the deck works. You can win games. It's competitive, which is like, if you're a fan of Yumi, at least you can still try it out, still win, and it's like not a problem. But I feel like that's all I personally have to say on Yumi.
Yeah.
Jumping into the last one, Galio.
Oh, yeah. I like Galio.
Galio's cool. He's not really like generally my playstyle. I haven't played many games on him, but I've seen Roji playing a bunch of Galio. Yeah. Soraka Galio is pretty cool. I played one game of it, and it was cool. It's like getting the overwhelm on him using Zenith Blades on those huge stat lines. Like it's pretty satisfying. One thing I got to say about Galio though, worst level up animation, borderline with Teemo. They got to get my man something else, bro.
What is it? I'm trying to remember.
He just like stands up, is like, "Hey, I'm Galio," and it's like, somebody's got to tune that one up.
Yeah, they got to like make it more epic.
Yeah.
I think Galio's power level, like, maybe slightly too weak. Just like slightly, but still playable, like does well in tournaments and stuff. I think a lot of that is just off of the power of Broadwing being just a nuts card, and Durand, I think the one that gives extra health when you summon units for permanently. That package they added is really strong to Demacia. Like Scouts is adopting it and stuff, just making Scouts stronger. But I think, like, yeah, thematically, Galio feels good. Like, putting it down on a full board of units feels awesome. His level up, like, makes sense and is strong. I didn't know if you knew this, but when, like, I lost a game because of this. If you, like, let's say you single combat a leveled Galio and kill it, it still gets the effect that round.
Really?
Yeah, like, if you're killing it in the action,
yeah,
they still get to rally, and I lost the game because of that. So, fair warning to you loaded dice players, don't make the same mistake I did. Beware of Galio level 2.
That's really interesting. Yeah, his level 2 is super threatening. Like, I've had games where he's leveled, and I'm like, man, I have to block and shoot my own unit, or I'm like screwed. And I'm like just shooting, like just chump blocking with shooting all my own units at the same time, and it becomes very difficult for sure. So like he's coming in, he's giving some immediate value with giving everything health, and then the payoff of the rallies is like, it's cool. He's a cool champion.
Definitely needs Spell Shield too. Like,
needs
if
Spell
he didn't
Shield?
have Spell Shield, he would be so bad.
Oh,
just
for
getting
sure.
Culling Strike like on the spot.
Left and right.
Yeah.
That's the other funny thing about Formidable with my experience with it. Obviously, I think some other decks might, but I had a deck redeem of a Formidable Galio deck. Ran into Lurk 3 times in a row, and it wasn't even like that. The Lurk, they drew 3 the hatchlings each game, and I just had to stand there and just watch the fearsomes. I was like, what do you do about this?
Yeah, it's Broadwing or bust.
Yeah,
like for real. Yeah, maybe Sharp Sight on like your Durand that actually has attack. But,
yeah.
we covered the new champs. I mean, Gnar is sick. We're both loving Gnar. Hopefully he doesn't get like gutted too much.
As many people, I feel like there's many people that feel the same way, and a lot of people that are real mad about
over it. Yeah.
But the funny thing about it is, like, because I'm usually, like, for example, it was Ari, it was Kennen that was OP before. I was sad times. I was the angry camp, and I'm seeing the tweets from all the Ari people like, oh, I can't believe I'm gonna be so sad when it gets nerfed. I'm like, you shut up. And now it's my turn. It's my turn where it's like, I'm gonna be sad, and I'm sure everyone else is like, just stop, dude. We've had enough of Gnar.
This meta is like way better though, I think, overall than the Ari Kennen meta, and like even Ari Kennen players should be able to admit that. Like the field is pretty wide open, even though it is a lot of Bandle City, but there's a lot of playable decks out there at the moment. So I think besides like the Bandle City cards that need hits, it's in a decent state right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'd say like one difference of it too is like the most powerful Gnar deck isn't as clear, I would say. Where it's like Ari Kennen, it was Ari Kennen, just the 2 versions of it, but essentially the same deck. Where it's like Gnar, it's a bunch of decks at that same broken power level, but all doing different things. Like, so you can just try Gnar in a bunch of different ways. You could try Bandle City in a bunch of different ways. So it's still like a diverse playing field. Like the way Ari was working was just like so limited.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah. Alongside the new cards, we have also gotten the new PvP announcement that seasonal casts will no longer be happening at all, right? It's not even for top cuts and stuff. There's no seasonal casts, but they're going to double down and go all in on Worlds. And so now, after a few seasons of ladder not mattering at all for Worlds, seasonal not mattering for Worlds, this is the first season now that we'll be qualifying for the new Worlds that's happening. So a lot of people are going to be tryharding on ladder. I think the seasonals is happening sometime in May, which is a delay from usual, which is like every 2 months usually. So this is like even more than 3 months away, which I think might also be part of the changes happening to seasonals. Even if they're not saying it, I think they may be spacing out the amount of seasonals that are happening. So we're getting like 1 less a year, maybe 2 less a year or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was sad news to hear. Like, obviously, big supporter of the seasonals. I wanted to do well in one myself, like getting the exposure of being on the Riot stream and just getting like that level of exposure, I think was huge for the game, huge for the players. Like, for example, players like Majin got a huge bump, pretty
Yeah.
much like launched their career off of performing in the seasonals. And I just think like with the broadcast not happening, that's just like not going to happen anymore. And that's kind of sad. And it's just like the reasoning that they had of like more people playing PvE than PvP, that's just going to feed into that more. Like you're going to have less reason to pull people into PvP specifically. And if the PvE is growing, I mean, I think that's still good for the game, just getting more players into the game. But at that cost, I feel like even lowering the prize pool to make the seasonal cast happen, the seasonal broadcasts are just such an important part of it. And I'm a little sad to hear about it. But hoping that Worlds, them putting those funds into Worlds, turns into like a cool thing. Not really sure exactly what that's going to look like, considering that we already know that they announced that the Worlds is not going to be in person. I was thinking potentially taking those funds to make an IRL event would have been something that I would have looked forward to. But to know that that's not what they're doing, a little skeptical, I would say.
Yeah, I've top cutted a seasonal. It was really cool to perform in it, and like also have been on casts of the official, like now Giant Slayer's was doing their open round casts and stuff. I know they were spending like probably over $10,000 on casters and production and stuff, which is a lot of money. But kind of like what you were saying, like 20,000 is a lot of money for the prize pool. Like you could be giving first place, like we could have it to 10K, and the first place still gets $5,000, and like that's a solid amount of money. I don't think like it's half as much, but getting a cast and providing more opportunities to a wider array of players, I think is more important. And also there's infrastructure now like Giant Slayer or like even MR. They are really well organized. You could be just paying out that money to them to do the cast, and they can find, not as famous casters who aren't going to charge as much, more just like indie community like figures to be casting those matches, and we would still get to have like those awesome on-screen moments as players. So completely losing that is pretty sad, and also it's like really discouraging for the casters, which like legitimizes professional competitive play of Runeterra. If there's no more seasonal casts, that was a big stepping stone and milestone for a lot of Runeterra casters to get to. It's like you cast community tournaments week in, week out. You're always there. You're building up your name, your brand, your understanding of the metagame, and then you get to cast the seasonals. They call you up to cast the open rounds, and then they have like the more famous people doing the top cut. And so like there was just an obvious ladder of progression if you're a caster and a voice in the community. And now, I mean, I would feel really defeated if I was a caster being like, there's no chance you're ever going to work up to Worlds unless you go get independent, like famous in another game and then come back and they ask you. There's zero chance that you're going to be able to progress and show your skill level outside of just like, indie weekly tournaments. Riot employees aren't going to be watching that as much to like decide who gets to cast. So I feel for them like a lot as well, as much as the competitive players. Not happy to see that development. But like I tweeted this out too. I literally thought they were going to cancel seasonals, like or like cancel Worlds. Like my expectations were that low because they had used the word that they wanted to make the seasonals more sustainable. So cutting casting, like it's really sad. I guess I can understand it from like a making it more sustainable perspective if they weren't like seeing much return on the casts. I don't think it's the right call. But I am happy as a player that we're not losing that aspect of competitive play completely yet.
Absolutely. Seasonals is just like such a fun experience and one of the ones I look forward to the most playing. So yeah, having it alive, I'll take what I can get, but I think they could have gone about it some different ways and like reevaluated it. Another thing I want to say kind of on that point though is just like coming into this game, I came from the Smash community, and that's a game that got zero support from its developer. The whole entire tournament scene, everything is just all grassroots, all by the players. And I've seen it done. I've seen that like you can still have a thriving competitive scene without any help from the developers. And what Runeterra gets is already so much more than that. So it's like if the community wants to make it happen, there's already been, Mastering Runeterra, Giant Slayer, a bunch of other groups that have done a lot of good work for those for the scene, and it's like it can happen. So it's like, competitive players, don't give up, don't be fully reliant on Riot, and boots on the ground, make some stuff happen, throw a tournament of your own, try to reach out to sponsors, get people. Like, yeah, we could do it ourselves if everybody just works hard and rallies together.
Yeah, I think, Master and Runeterra has, like, Giant Slayer's been doing fight nights and they've been doing a great job for a long time, but Master and Runeterra really has, like, just built up a great community, and the $100 dailies they're doing, the RA, like, competitive Runeterra Academy season that they ran was super cool to watch, and, like, did a great job of building up stories and rivalries between teams, and, like, you know, letting lesser known players, like, build a name for themselves. They've been doing a great job, like, overall, and I think they're stepping up in a big way, where this, like, we've talked about wanting to see more competitive play, and a lot of other people have too. I think they're taking on a bit of that mantle, which is, like, awesome to see. Yeah, we do have the power as a grassroots community to come together and build something worth playing. I think without seasonals, like, if they did cancel it, it would be, like, a lot of people would stop playing.
Yeah.
It's, like, something to aim for. It makes ladder worth it. I think no worlds would, like, it wouldn't stop as many people because not as many people play in that, but yeah, just, it'll be interesting to see how it develops from here on out.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite thing about it too. It incentivizes people playing daily, people playing on the ladder so much. They never really solved the problem, I feel like, of, you know, the necessity to camp at certain points.
Right.
But the part of, like, with worlds getting qualified through ranked, like, so many people this season I think are going to be gunning for the number 1 spot, gunning for those guaranteed spots into it. People really are going to put that extra time into their seasonal lineups and stuff like that. So I like the way that both of them interact with each other. I just wish, you know, they could have found a way to make it a little bit more beneficial for themselves so they can keep it going. But I think, like, conceptually, the idea and the effect it has on the player base that's already here is strong, and it's cool.
It's, I feel like us content creators are in, like, a unique spot when it comes to seasonals and competitive play, because, like, you're supposed to be playing new decks and, like, keeping content refreshing and, like, playing stuff that isn't always meta and putting out videos on those, and people don't want, at least in my mind, don't want to watch, like, normal games as much as they want to see it, like, in ranked where they would actually be playing these games. And so, like, Faint, who's number 5 on ladder right now, I'm top 30, like, I don't want to throw away all my LP just making like a week's worth of videos. Like, the strategy has sometimes been to just, like, stay low on ladder, make a bunch of content, and then, like, try to hard grind in the last, like, week or 2 weeks, and just, like, not really put any videos out at all because you're, like, playing the tier 1 decks. It's hard to, like, decide what you're going to do in that spot. I talked to Duckling about it too a little bit, and he was like, outside of my job, I only have time to, like, either stream and just do that for fun, or, like, actually play competitively and not stream or make content. And he's like, I'm just going to play competitively because I'm good at that. He's won a seasonal. Like, there's a lot of return on investment if he just takes that seriously. But for people like Faint and I who are kind of trying to do both in some senses,
to find the balance,
it's a little tricky for sure.
Yeah, that is a part that I kind of didn't think about right now, but for us content creators, that is a rough portion. Either having to try to keep up with Smurf. I feel like it'd be cool if there is, like, I mean, obviously they're going the opposite direction with this, but some, like, in-client tournaments, things like that. I mean, that's, like, where we can have the opportunities to mess with decks and have some stakes with it. But then you take the hit in that regard. So it's a balancing act for sure. One thing that was also shared in the roadmap was a new champion that is going to be added to the game with a very cool effect happening, which is Jhin. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that. What Jhin is able to do is essentially act as a region in itself. Like, when you're adding Jhin as a region. And his ability is that you can take any unit that has a skill from any region and add it into the deck, which is, I think, is crazy for deck building. You can go so many different ways with it. So I want to get your impressions on the idea of a almost regionless champ.
Yeah, we had, I think, even mentioned it before on the podcast. I was like, after releasing the last region, the 10th region, I was like, how are they going to keep it, like, fresh and interesting and keep building up excitement for the game? Releasing champions in the same regions for the rest of eternity, like, doesn't sound as exciting as, like, a new region or something like that to look forward to. So I think from a design perspective, this is a really creative way to solve that problem. If you don't want to be building an entire region full of units and followers and champs for like design reasons or just like lore reasons, then I think this is like probably one of the best solutions for that. So I'm really excited from like a deck building perspective. From a power level perspective, I don't know if like this specific champion Jhin is going to be like crazy strong or tier 1. It's kind of hard to predict, I think, with currently the meta and like the skills that are on followers in the game. My initial impression would be like it's not going to be tier 1, but there will be some tier 2 decks. I think we talked about like Bandletree being really strong. Obviously, there's no region limitation, and I think like there are a lot of burn deck variants, stuff that can run like Doom Beast, Crackshot Corsair, and like the Noxus package of like Demolitionist and stuff like that. That could be really like potent with Jhin. But overall, design-wise, like the most open champion that you can put with a bunch of stuff. Kind of like Zoe, or like there's just like, yeah, I don't know, a lot of unlimited possibility when it comes to deck building with them. So I like it from design for sure, and I'm more excited knowing that there's going to be Runeterra champions coming out that like just like kind of change the game with each new release. It has way more effect potential than like something like a Yumi, where it's like, oh well, I have one deck and that's all I'm gonna do. It's like, oh wow, we're like changing the way that Runeterra plays with the champions.
Yeah, I think like it'll be really cool to see the way it unravels. I think it'll take a while for like the best Jhin deck to find out. There'll be so many different like creative ways to take advantage of it. And I'm excited for the like idea of it and like what that means in the future, like what the next Runeterra champion is going to look like and how that's going to work. I'm a little worried in the sense of like once they keep adding more and more Runeterra champions with these different types of effects, like how that's going to work for balancing. I think it's going to make balancing very difficult.
Yeah.
Because something could be really potent in a Runeterra champion type deck and then not so strong in its actual region in itself or something of that regard. So it's like it's going to be a lot of toss up, and I'm kind of worried also in the aspect of like I feel like more balance patches is something I've always talked about wanting for myself in the game and enjoying, and I think it'll become more of a necessity when you're taking such an ambitious approach with these styles of champions. So excited and a little worried almost in itself.
I think for a tournament meta too, it's kind of interesting. Like you were saying, balance can be difficult. Like if there is a champion that comes out that's a Runeterra champion that is like brokenly strong, like tier 0, that could make the tournament meta really, really bad because there's often like one or two decks. I mean, there's always one deck, but there's often a second deck that they just like pair together and they're like insanely strong. We're talking like Ari Kennen and Pantheon from last seasonals. And then the third deck in that slot was like very flexible. It like could be a bunch of stuff because there wasn't a third deck that was like, you know, quite at that power level that like matched the same two. But if you're adding in a Runeterra champion and let's say that's broken like tier 0, all of a sudden the tournament meta could become very, very stale of like it's the broken Runeterra champion, the two best decks, and that's all you're seeing. And so I think that could really limit tournament play if that happens, and they'll have to be willing to hotfix Runeterra champions way more than they have other stuff in the past if they're a problem, because they have more potential to break the game than like other champs and cards.
Like way bigger implications. But I'm gonna go ahead and be an optimist and like go into it wishing for the best, hoping for the best, and like it could be a very cool thing. Like it seems super unique, not something I've seen in like a lot of other games. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, same. I'm on the positive side of it's going to be a good thing, and at least with Jhin, the powered level, like it looks like it won't be game breaking. So we'll wait for 4LW to prove me wrong on that one.
If there's someone that's gonna show me something wild that I didn't expect, it's gonna be that guy for sure.
We also wanted to shout out cool thing Riot is doing with the Battle Pass. They're donating proceeds from it to help humanitarian relief in Eastern Europe and Ukraine. With all that's going on over there. So that's a pretty cool thing they're doing. If you want to buy the Battle Pass, you can be happy that your money is going towards a worthwhile cause.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool announcement that just happened and like a good cause. So I might get myself a Battle Pass because I have never purchased a Battle Pass. It hasn't been something like I've felt the need for. I'm not normally huge on cosmetics and stuff, but giving me a good reason to do something like that, I'm all for it.
I think there's Prismatic Gnar in there too, so you might get a little bonus off of that.
I already got him.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for the episode, dude.
Dude, it's been a pleasure. Always good to link up with you, bro. Until next time, everybody.
Loaded Dice signing off. Peace out, guys.
Peace.
Nice.
We did it.